Hello there. I'm Mr. Sean B.W. Parker from Empowering the Innocent TV. And today we're talking to Mr. Mike Thompson, who is the founder and organizer of the Falsely Accused Network, which is very active and very interesting. And I joined one of their meetings the other day and it was great. So we'll talk to him and find out more about it in this interview. Hi there, Mike. How's it going?
Good evening, Sean. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm absolutely brilliant. I can remember about a year ago we met at Falsely Accused Day in London under the
We
careful
did.
Margaret Gardner, and we just discovered a mutual love for Mr. Morrissey.
Yes.
Have you
Yes.
had any experience of Mr. Morrissey recently? Or
Um, he's doing a tour this year. He's going to do a big gig in Manchester. I think it's in June. But just a couple of nights ago, I went to see a Smiths tribute band in Manchester, and they were fantastic.
is it good?
Sounded really like the Smiths, and oh yeah, yeah. Smiths, the Smiths Limited, they're called.
Ah, good name. Good. What's your favourite Smith song or Morrissey song?
Oh, my favourite Smith song is a song called "Stretch Out and Wait." Favorite Morrissey song has to be, and this is a bit cheesy. It's a cheesy one, but I really like it. The Last of the Famous International Playboys.
That's my favourite Morrissey song too. Wow, check that
There you
out.
go. There you go. There you go.
Cool people like the cool Morrissey songs. Okay, and they're all
That's it.
oh, that's brilliant. I last of the famous international Playboy. Anyway, Hope Morrissey's watching. If you are, hi Mozza, we're fans here. Controversial figure though he is, cancelled all the time for pretty much speaking honestly in public for 40 years. And Falsely Accused Network is known for speaking pretty honestly in public, as one must in these weird cancelly times. Do you want to give us a little brief history of False Allegation Network and your participating in it?
Yeah. So my story, how I got into this actually, was paternity fraud. So for those that don't know what that means, in essence, I was conned into believing a child was my biological child. I won't obviously identify anybody. When the child was around 2 years old, I had a DNA test done. The obvious signs were that he didn't look like me. I could tell he looked like his mother, but I couldn't see a resemblance to me, and it was playing on my mind a lot. Um, so I did a DNA test, and unfortunately, it came back and confirmed I wasn't the biological father of the child. I made a very good, educated guess that my wife at the time had an affair with a married man, and that is what I believe motivated her to do this. And I was correct. So I wanted to keep the child. As far as we were concerned, we loved him. He loved us. My guess that the man, his biological father, would have been a married man was correct in the end. She had other ideas. She went through the game of letting me see him, then not, then yes, then no, and the little merry-go-round. So I went to the family court, and that's where I was hit with a barrage of false allegations of domestic abuse, completely false. And then after all that, um, I set up an organisation called Paternity Fraud UK. It's still up and running. It's still up and running. So anybody who's been affected by paternity fraud um, can come to me, come to us, and we can get them the legal support and the emotional psychological support. But what was happening was a lot of men were talking about false allegations of domestic abuse, and I thought, well, actually, I've been there, done that, got the T-shirt on that, and I decided to set something up myself to support it, and it's predominantly men that ring me. It's about 98%. We do help women, though. Let me make that very clear. Women don't get turned away, but it's I decided to set the false accused network up, and from the moment we started, the phone has never stopped.
Yeah. Wow. So fascinating stuff. why? What's your analysis of why your ex started to go down the false allegations route on top of all the other deceit?
I suspect it was to divert away from her own immoral behaviour. It was to take attention away from that. But the reality is, I'll never really know. I'll never really know. So I'm speculating that. But I suspect it was to take away the attention from her own behaviour.
Mhm. Right. So yeah, that's how this thing got started in the first place. Then paternity fraud, and
Yep.
then so kind of taking it into the wider world. Can you explain to the viewers of ETI what VORG means? Because it's an acronym that people might be confused by, but you won't be.
So it's that's government initiative violence against women and girls.
Right. Yeah.
And there is a lot of controversy around how those stats are collated because it includes actual male victims in that. So it's actually inflating that figure.
How can they do that? How can they conflate VORG with male victims of abuse?
You want my real honest opinion? Is that
Absolutely.
what? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I think the reality of domestic abuse is, in reality, it's going down. It's going lower on women. So, but to keep the narrative going, they've got to keep the figures high.
Right.
And that's what I believe they're doing.
It's an inconvenient statistic.
It's an inconvenient statistic that I believe that actually women have never been safer in a domestic setting than they have now. Yes, I know domestic abuse goes on. It's deplorable and I hate it. But I suspect this is why they're doing that. That's why they're putting the male victims in there to keep that figure high. To say, look, there's a problem still.
Totally.
That's
Totally.
my own theory. That's my own theory. Again, I can't prove that it's a theory.
The stats are so complex and they're so easy to weaponize and to manipulate that almost every intelligent observer tired of stats anyway because it can be twisted all sorts of ways, can't they?
Mm-hmm.
But one of the most interesting ones I've heard over the last year is that not a stat but like a fact is that most domestic violence is started by women, but when men respond, they do more harm when they do so. And that
Yeah.
makes intuitive sense for a change. Do you have any comment on that observation? Because it sticks in the head quite well.
But it does make sense because if a woman initiates the violence, then a man, by his nature, is physically bigger, so can do more damage.
Mm,
Absolutely. Mm.
mm. And the work of Mr. Jared Whittaker recently,
Mm-hmm.
who's been writing book after book. He's very inflamed with it. I did an interview with him about a month ago. And more historically, Mr. William Collins. Are these names sort of familiar sort of to you at all, or both of them, either of them?
Yes. So I've met Jared. He's come and done a talk for our guys in our meetings. Really, very inspirational figure. In fact, his story is harrowing. It's horrible what he went through. But I have a lot of admiration for him because, in fact, he was one of because of the strength he's shown in coming forward and talking about what's happened to him. It actually gave me the strength to come forward and be a bit more active on podcasts.
Oh,
Um, and I'm familiar with William Collins. He wrote The Empathy Gap, which I
yeah,
have a copy.
yeah. It's he's dry and comes from another field into this, and so to get in it, it's like if you really want your stats and your facts, you can get them all in there. And we covered it all ages ago, and it
Yeah.
comes up against such a brick wall of VORG messaging.
Mm-hmm.
This VORG messaging is so powerful because do you agree, or correct me if I'm wrong, right? Honestly, do that they seem to have a cartel in Westminster which lets through to the media. And then anything that men do, or the rational voices do, not men, the women writing in this, is met with just you're a conspiracy theorist or a men's rights activist, and that's immediately othered. And this is our problem, isn't it? This is why one doesn't get noticed, however nice and rational you are.
Yeah. I call them the feminazis,
Right.
the feminist mafia, if you like. It's very real. It does exist. They're in very, very key, powerful positions in government, in media, in the education system, social services, judiciary. I would go as far to say is actually a feminist organisation. Family court certainly is. The criminal court certainly is. The way men are treated in both of those institutions is nothing short of disgraceful. And it's embarrassing that a country like Great Britain treats men like the way it doesn't in the family court and in the criminal court. And it has to change.
Right. So, there's a couple of names to throw at you just to get your responses more than anything. Javier Milei of Argentina. Any thoughts?
Not familiar.
Javier Milei. Okay, well, he's the new president of Argentina for about the last 2 years or year. He's the guy.
Oh, okay.
All of the government departments saying "afuera, afuera," which then inspired the Trump and Vance revolution over there. And he did a speech about 2 months ago saying the feminism is the most destructive effect on Argentinian society. He came out basically like an MRA, but just a a very, very honest speaking bloke in a way that Trump and Vance appear to want to call out some truths, and to enunciate some things that people are saying. So that's Javier. He's got some crazy hair going on. There's another name for you, Jess Phillips. Any response to that?
Jess Phillips, are you trying to make me ill?
Okay.
Are you trying to make me vomit? That's the very woman who scoffed and laughed when male suicide was mentioned in that clip on the committee. She is a very, very dangerous woman. She's a very, very hard left-wing feminist, right? Yeah, and it's not remote. I do not believe that's worded this carefully. I do not believe she cares one iota about men and boys.
No,
not one part of her being remotely cares about men and boys, and yet she's quite high up in the British government.
She doesn't stop, and there was an article that she did in an Independent or Guardian a couple of months ago where she said, "Yeah, I've got an ego. I can't help it. I really like the attention." And it's that fourth wave for feminism, though she's the third wave in age, but she's got that fourth wave spirit, and she's an inspiration to them, which appears to be like, do whatever you want, say whatever you want, just win the war. And then whenever you point out rationalist things like, what about men and boys being a third of the victims, or women start it, these two facts, you're treated as if you're irritating distraction in their hospital, in their narrative. That the narrative isn't fixed and set; it's a political being. So, and that's why FAN and ETI exist. In order to, and there's lots of women who are saying the same thing. So this is not a men's thing anymore. I know so many women not support it.
It's how do I put this? Our issue isn't with women, it's with feminism.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Feminism is a political ideology with its own belief system, structure, dogma. That is the issue. Is those set of beliefs, if you like, in ideology, not women.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of male feminists out there. Most British judges are male feminists. So there's plenty of them out there. The men that are feminists. So it's the ideology, it's the ideas. That's my issue.
Completely. Yeah. No. Yeah. And the man in charge of the country, Keir Starmer, is the simping chief, if you will, if you want to clip that up, journalist. He designed the Believe the Victim policy as head of the CPS, as a man who knows what he's doing 15 or so years ago. And it's his actions that have inspired the mothers of the accused, I call them, who fill my inbox with, what do I do about my son, Sean? What do I do about my husband? And I'm like, patience, the tide is going to turn. Because Believe the Victims is just an inversion of the innocent till proven guilty policy, as I'm sure you're aware, empowering the innocent, and I write about this all the time. And it was his idea that came up with that in order to reverse the problem with child abuse in the 90s. And, you hint that the domestic violence could be going down and they're not prepared to acknowledge that. The same thing with child abuse years ago, because of the work done and the exposure and stuff. But they have to keep pretending that it's continuing. And so we're stuck in this narrative of hatred everywhere. But all I want is some clarity, truth, and fairness and actual sexual balance, And that's why they have difficulty with people like you and me, I think, is because we're very reasonable and we're not out there saying you bitches all over the place. It's not the narrative at all. I don't feel that. Most of my friends are women, and they speak exactly like we do, much more fiercely though, about their history,
I agree. I totally agree. This isn't about women. This is about feminism.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting you talked about that believe the victim narrative there, because it's almost like the family court and the criminal courts in the United Kingdom have regressed back to the 1600 witch trials, where once, I honestly, I get the impression that once a man's accused, that's it. You are guilty unless you can prove you're innocent. And even if you can prove you're innocent, well, he's probably guilty in the family court. The family court can come in with a final nudge there and say he's probably guilty, so we'll treat him as guilty.
Yeah.
And once that allegation's made, whether it's in the criminal court or the family court, it starts off a big process, big wheel, and ultimately, men are losing their life, are killing themselves every day because of what's going on out there.
Yeah.
It's very real. I have to deal with suicidal men on a weekly basis, where I'm having to speak to them on the phone, try my hardest to convince them not to kill themselves. So when people out there that certain barristers in London, female feminist barristers who won't name, say that may or may not be referring to her, but when certain people say that false allegations of domestic abuse are harmless or don't cause much effect, they are so wrong. So wrong.
Absolutely, always have been. It's a resistance that they always knew would be coming along, and they've been trained in the gender studies classes how to deal with that, which is the power grab is to ignore and to diffuse and deflate until things like the Trump revolution happen, and then something comes in to wipe it all away, and then they proclaim outrage and the right wing and the far right and men's right and all this stuff. And you're like, no, it's a return to balance. It's a return to the center. It's the open window, that's an issue that has to be. Also, Mike, I wanted to ask you about that. There's this idea that why don't men come forward more, and why don't men express it? Everyone's expecting men to express themselves in the same way as women, a part of the feminization of culture, right? It's something that I've increasingly become aware of, and the unfairness within that. You got any comment on that?
Yeah, I do. The reason why men don't come forward more, there's a few reasons. Number one, a lot of men actually don't realise they're being abused. Especially if you look at the way women abuse more psychologically, emotionally, coercive, controlling way. And men out there, it's quite a common question that I ask on the helpline is when I get the man to talk about the relationship, and I say 99% of the time they've been abused, the man I'm speaking to is a victim. And I say, do you realise that you are an actual domestic abuse victim? Most don't realise it. Don't realise it at all. The ones that do realise it, and a question I do follow up with, I go, have you reported this to the police or to a GP or anything? Some have, and they say, I've went to the police and I've heard it many times, they just laughed at me or they just wrote it down and never got back to me, weren't interested. And then some don't, they just say they don't see the point. They don't see the point. And we're talking, I've heard some serious incidents of even sexual abuse that a woman's perpetrated on men, that men have disclosed to me on the helpline. And that's gone unreported. They might feel embarrassed or ashamed as well. That's another common. So That's why men don't come forward.
Yeah. The whole idea that you'll go out for a drink with a pal or some pals and then go, I can't believe this happened. And everybody kind of comes around and says, you need to go and report to the police you've been abused. It's so unusual for a man. It's such a high bar because you are really admitting we are trained to believe a failure of your own relationship and your own judgment in that relationship. I didn't know she
Hmm.
was going to be that crazy. That kind of thinking. You think, God, they're going to think I'm so stupid for staying around with somebody so crazy, for want of a better term. And then, of course, the feminists will say she might look crazy, but actually it's because of the abuse she was doing to her, and they'll do that in the family court, right? And
Oh
that's
yes, oh yes.
and that's just a circular toxicity, really. And I would not like to be a lawyer in that context. Women like Miss Charlotte Proudman, I've never met her, but due to her public messaging, I imagine it could be great at constructing those circular narratives in order to get her clients off. I believe she does
Oh
well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, it's truly something I'll never get my head around, Sean, is till obviously what happened to me with the paternity fraud that then led on to false allegations of domestic abuse and then setting up the helpline of paternity fraud and the false allegation side of it. I don't think my mind or his spirit was ready for the cruelty of that I was about to happen to me and then I'm having to help other men through. The cruelty of some of these women out there is breathtaking, breathtakingly evil.
Yeah, yeah,
And I'm dealing with a very, very sad case now, and I have to be very careful what I say. I have to keep it very vague. His ex partner is just relentlessly throwing everything she can to stop him seeing his child.
mm,
You name it, every trick in the book, she's throwing at him, and he's a good man, an innocent man as well. I believe I've had helped him with his evidence in his case, and I believe he's innocent. And I don't think I was ever prepared for it.
yeah. Well, congratulations for doing that kind of thing. You're so valuable, as you know, and it's not like we're trained lawyers in that. I don't know about you, but
Yeah.
it's not like that. We're helping and academic.
No, I'm not. No, no, I'm not. I'm not a lawyer. As part of False Accused Network, I've built up a network of lawyers that I know on the criminal side and on the family law side, who are all of them are very, very, very passionate, pro justice, um, very supportive to the guys that we support and do a fantastic job. And then for guys that are on a lower income, and we know well, they're called Mackenzie friends, who can help people in the family court who are cheaper than a solicitor, but they can't speak on their behalf, and so they pretty much assist somebody in family court, but they've got legal knowledge. Again, very very supportive towards men and men issues, and do a fantastic job.
Fantastic, great to hear that. And that's the network which you are clearly so good at because it's important to listen as well, isn't it? As well as being able to deliver. And I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
say you're helping that man, and we help these people. And in the back of one's head, there might sometimes be, I wonder if they are absolutely guilty and absolutely innocent. I talked to Dr. Michael Norton quite a lot about this subject, in that the definition of crime has changed, where guilt and innocence. If you said to them, like, well, have you ever sort of got angry with them and threatened something? Or did you get drunk once and not get full consent for whatever she's saying happened? And all those things are so mixed up now and so easy to manipulate because of what happened in the courts over the last 15 years, that almost the nature of right and wrong and innocence and guilt have gone out of relationships. And it's into the pure human, isn't it?
Yeah. Thank you for that question, and I agree with what you said there. And it's a question again. Oddly enough, somebody asked me not today on Twitter as they did. Um, have I had people who have called me and I've had doubts about their innocence? The answer is yes. To be frank, there's some, not often, not often, but there's some where my instincts kick in and the story's not adding up, and there's that, and I'm like, I'm not sure about this person. It's rare it happens. I'll be frank, it's very rare, but yes. But it's not for me to decide if this person's guilty or not. So
No,
I, I cannot do that. I'm not the judge, jury, and executioner, and I will still link them up with a legal professional because everybody's entitled to legal assistance, guilty or not.
that's it.
Um,
That's the thinking, isn't it? And
it,
it's go on.
yeah, it just yeah, it does. I'm just thinking of one. I remember this one person where I was like, oh, all the alarm bells were going off. It was just not right. Um, I don't think we finished that call, or I made some excuses and managed to get away from it. So
Mm.
it is very, very rare where I come across somebody where I think this person's guilty. Very rare.
The thing that I get on the other end of this, and I don't really handle men, I don't explicitly say, come and call me for in the way you do, is that you get calls from men who don't realize that what they've done is they're guilty, or they've actually committed a crime or something. This is really,
Yeah.
we don't have time to go into this too much now, but this is very relevant for the Pakistani grooming situation of the last couple of months, which is a
Mm-hmm.
massive subject elsewise. But let's face it, loads of those guys don't know that they did something wrong, right? And it's that because it's a multiculturalism as well as being falsely accused and
Mm-hmm.
the rest of it, and the changing nature of the law. They're like, well, if they're out there, what's the problem? Well, that's not quite how we rock in Britain. So there's that
Mm-hmm.
whole area of there are people within that culture who are falsely accused too. If you point that out, then people will say, "Oh, you want them all to come in?" You're like, "No, no, no. I'm trying to be objective about what's actually happened here." Um, but that's just skirting around to say to the point that lots of the time people don't know they're doing something wrong because we're talking about
Yeah.
relation, not about crime, isn't it?
What you've highlighted there is something that I spotted as well early on. Is that and we'll just talk about domestic abuse here. Is there's an ever changing definition, and even what men might think is quite innocent things could be, if you look at it in a certain way, be deemed as domestic abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the worst, the most common allegation that a man will face on domestic abuse, if they're going to be falsely accused of domestic abuse, it must be nearly every case that comes through us, is coercive control. That is the one that nearly every guy that comes on the helpline or is going through the family court has been accused of coercive control. So if you review Section 86 of the Serious Crime Act 2015, it is probably the most wishy-washy, poorly written act criminal offences that's ever been drafted into the UK legislation. It is so vague and open to interpretation. It is no wonder this is getting thrown out. This allegation is getting thrown out like confetti at the moment.
Mm-hmm. And that's
It's
exactly
it's
how they keep the train going, isn't it? With such
yeah,
really vague and lots of the
it's
lawyers
vague, very vague, changing the definition, and it just keeps getting wider. The net gets wider and wider and wider and wider and wider and wider.
yeah, destroy the
I can
family,
give you,
put the man
I
away.
can give you an example. I can give you an example of a ridiculous one. Obviously, not naming any names. Gentleman came through on the helpline, and he said to his kids, um, "If you don't buy me a birthday card, I'll never talk to you again." Now he says it was a joke, and I believed him. I believed him. That was raised as an allegation of coercive control, and he was found proven in the family court.
Wow. that's the level that they can go to if they want to get something done.
Pettiness. That's the pettiness. I heard of one where I've got to just always just change a little bit of details. I've just got to be careful, obviously, because we're talking about family court stuff. A gentleman threw a pillow at his partner, and that was used as evidence of assault in the family court, and the judges went with it.
I'm imagining there were things before the pillow, but there might not have been at all, might there? Other things, right? No, just the pillow.
That was it. That was it. Threw a pillow, and that's it.
Not
She's
as
not hurt. I'm saying, let me just make it clear. It's wrong. Okay, yeah, but
I'm not sure.
that is so. This is it. This is the level that they're at now.
Wow. Well, there we go, Mike. I think we've properly exposed the inner workings as best we can about this, or a little highlight into how it works. That's exactly what I wanted to achieve with what we're doing. How do we find Falsely Accused Network online? Do you want to give us a quick?
So our website is www.falselyaccusednetwork.co.uk, or email us at support@falselyaccusednetwork.co.uk. We'll arrange a call with you, and then you will have a phone call with me or one of my volunteers who helps out, and we will go through everything that's been going on, and we'll start to get you the right help that you need, whether it be legal help, whether it be some mental health support. And we also have a private peer support group with regular Zoom meetings. Sean, you were at one last week, where we get together and we help each other through this nightmare. And I can just say, anybody who's watching this is going through this and maybe not called us or got support, I can assure you, you will be treated seriously, you will be supported, and you are certainly not alone.
That's fantastic stuff. Thank you so much, Mike. And I think, as all of our reviewers can tell, this is not a men and women issue, but it is a feminism now issue. And
that's it.
We can both agree on that one. And long live Morrissey. Let's go out where we came in. Well done, Captain. And thank you so much, Mike. See you soon at Falsely Accused Day or somewhere else. All right. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sean. Bye-bye.